Hello, and welcome to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. This is where we share stories for inspiration, entertainment, and encouragement because we all know emergency nurses have the best stories. Now here's your host, Kevin McFarland.
First off, I want to thank you for listening to the podcast, and I want to ask you a little favor. If you're enjoying the podcast, there are a couple things you can do to help out the show. The first thing is to leave a review in your podcast player of choice. At this time, I only have about 25 ratings and reviews in iTunes, and I'd like to double that in the next couple weeks. Your reviews are what help new listeners find this show. That brings me to favor number 2. Share this podcast with your friends who will like it or maybe just need to hear the message. I love listeners just like you, so share this podcast with other wonderful ER nurses. Thank you in advance for doing that. I have a little bit of a different episode planned for you this week. If you haven't already read my ER exit letter on the website Medium, I highly encourage you to do that. I'm going to put a link in the show notes. It's not required for you to understand this week's guest, but it might help for a little context. My guest today is the concerned ER nurse who wrote that letter. Her name is Jessica Nandino, and her letter has been read by over 30,000 people so far. I want to talk to her a little bit about the letter, and you get a chance to listen in on that conversation. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Well, boy, you have just gone viral, haven't you?
It's crazy. It's overwhelming, Kevin.
Is it a little intimidating?
It is. Yeah, it is intimidating. I think the letter. I think we'll call it the letter. Initially, I started writing that a month, when I gave my notice, because I talked to my director and she said, make sure you fill out the exit interview.
Yeah, you're like, oh, and, sure.
I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Maybe I could just write a letter and send it to administration.
Yeah.
I knew it was my time to go and move on and make space for the next thing to come along. But, and then, I don't know, as I was writing it, it just kind of turned also into, a little bit of a love letter for the people I work with, and for those of us that are in this crazy job. And I think what happened when I decided to share it is when I was going over just a draft with a couple of my coworkers, and all of a sudden both of them just kind of broke down into tears, and they both said we thought we were the only ones. I thought I've been losing my mind. I didn't know that other people were feeling this way. That the coping mechanisms that used to work for so long, or we're doing the job, just suddenly, just can't even compete with what I think we're kind of faced with every day. And, so for me, that was the point that I was okay, this is bigger than just me having, a final say with,
It's been, it's been so widely, it's gone so wide. It's just crazy. Which is really cool.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty. Yeah, it is intense. I don't know. This morning I looked at the numbers and I was like, "Oh my gosh! What? Over 30,000 people. I don't know."
Isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy when something like that happens? Where you're like, "Wow!" I did a video. In one of the Facebook groups once, and it was about basically standing up against workplace violence and joining the Raise Your Hand movement, and the thing got 10,000 views, which I was like, holy smokes, that's crazy.
Happens overnight.
You're like, how many people shared this thing? It had so many shares and so many views, and I was like, that's great. I was like, I joked with my wife. I said, if I knew so many people were going to see it, I would have combed my hair. But
right? I guess that's I've thought that. I'm like, thank God I just put that picture of me as a kid. know. There's a little bit of detachment there.
Yeah, it's funny.
But yeah, I mean, I think the wide response is, taking something that initially started off that I was like, I'm lucky if someone higher up will read this to the end, will actually read this. To something that so many people are responding to and identifying with is just, I really didn't mean it. Like I love that hospital. I've never worked with such a great group of people, leadership included. And really, I meant that letter to be a critique of the system,
Yeah.
Not to any, I think the problem we're facing and kind of the problem I was trying to address or bring light to it's just so much bigger than any one person, one director, one hospital, and it's I don't know, I don't think I've seen anyone read it outside of the United States, but it's across the board. I'm getting emails from east to west coast.
Are you getting emails from people who read it?
Yeah, just kind of identifying like, hi, my name is so and so. I'm in Texas. I experienced the same thing. New York, Virginia, like just across the board.
That's cool. That's really cool. It's when I read it, there's so much that I can relate to in there that I was like, I get it, like I understand. But it's universal. You're right. It's universal. It's not one hospital. It's not one system. It's everywhere, and it's so widespread. The burdens that are being placed on the emergency department across the country is just outrageous. And everywhere I go, I hear the same thing, and I hear the same stories, and it's always kind of crazy when you talk to people and you realize you're like, oh my God, we have the same problems.
Yeah, we're not alone in this.
Yeah,
and I think that was kind of one thing I love about working in the emergency department is, like over the years I've noticed like a lot of because you're working in kind of, it's not always life or death, but a lot of the times it's not actually. But just the nature of the emergency department, like it tends to like strip down a lot of those layers. So it distills out a lot of truths. Like you see stuff you tend to see it for what it is, maybe a lot faster than you would in other areas.
Yeah.
So I think that some of this may be why, like in the emergency department or as emergency room nurses, like we're feeling this is not because it's not happening in other areas of the hospital, but just it is just so much more present in the ER, and we're also so good at just usually like figuring it out and making it work. We're really good at that. I think almost to our detriment sometimes, and I don't know. I think there's that fine line between like when do we just all pull together and make it work, because that's the inherent nature of this job, and one of the things we all love. One of the things we just can't quit, versus when is it just how systems are being formed and systems are being, followed, and almost like our ability to just adapt becomes part of that equation and taken for granted.
Totally. I think that ER nurses more than any other are so adaptive, and they just deal, and it's like, we're the only department in the whole hospital that doesn't get to say no. The floors get full and then they say no. The ICUs get full and they say no. They're too unstable. The ICU says no. In the ED doesn't get to say no.
Yeah, no, you can't. It's right in front of you.
Yeah, you just do it. And like some EDs get to go on divert and say, okay, hey, we can't take ambulance traffic. Well, that's fine, but that doesn't keep people from rolling through the front doors. And, and as you know, anything can roll through the front doors.
Yeah.
It often does.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, when I started as a nurse 9 years ago, some of the nurses that I attribute like kind of keeping me under their wings and like helping me learn the game and keeping me safe. They were lifers. This was their career, and a lot of them retired from it. And it's unfortunate because I don't see that in emergency rooms anymore. It's almost like we've created something where it's like, oh, the emergency room is somewhere you go, for a couple years, but eventually it's going to burn you out. It's going to catch up with you, and you're going to move on to something else. And I think that's a shame. I think that there are ER nurses out there that that could do this their entire career if they were working in a system that just gave them a little more support, or I don't know, kind of took care of them just a little better.
But I wonder, because I mean, even the system that you were in when I started there many years ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, the average tenure of nurses were over 10 years. Like most of the nurses were over 10-year nurses. And some of them were, retiring from there. And right. it was, the level of experience there was just phenomenal. I mean, just people who'd seen and done it all and been there, done that. Right. But now, I mean, but even then it wasn't a fraction as busy as it is now. It wasn't as fraction as, it seems like the people are sicker. There are more of them. It's, it's just a constant barrage. I remember at one of the other hospitals, I remember having evening shifts where we would have, we usually would get our last patient out by about midnight, and there may be one or two stragglers there, but there weren't many. And from like midnight till about 5 a.m, we usually had pretty quiet nights. Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't think that happens anymore. I mean, it's just, I know when I came to that department, that is the thing I just completely underestimated, which it's a whole different skill set, like the being able to deal with the volume, and the acuity. There's so many sick patients, and there's so many of them, and it's hard. I have the feels for the nurses that I don't know if they quite are given the opportunity to kind of become and manifest into the incredible ER nurses they could be, just because it is like just keep your head above water sometimes, like just doggy paddle, just trying to survive. And
keep your nose above water.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that about just, keep your nose up, or your snorkel.
Yeah.
That you say that about the 10 years, because, I mean, after I left and I was a couple months over my 3-year mark, it was kind of like, yep, that's about how long people last here, And then that changed. That has changed pretty quickly.
And that's the case, I think, in most EDs. I think most ED nurses are, I think most people, if you're hiring somebody and you can get 2 or 3 years out of an ER nurse, you're doing fantastic. And, not many stay in one place past about 5 years. And when I left, I was there longer than most. And I left there, and it probably doesn't all count because I was casual pool for a long time, but I was there for 18 years.
Wow.
And
so you saw it grow
in that
amazing way.
And that felt like a lifetime. And boy, the changes that happened, holy cow! But but certainly that's not the norm. I mean, most nurses go on to other things, or go do something else, or go to a different part of nursing and continue their nursing career. Hopefully that's, certainly what we hope. And, not many get out and do something completely different, but think of the ER knowledge base that's not doing much in, an urgent care somewhere where they see, not belittling the urgent care environment at all, because it's, God bless them. Thank God they do what they do. But the acuity is not there, and they're busy, but the acuity is not there for sure.
What is it? You can kind of look at it, like I tried to say in the letter, like, I know that our system is pretty broken, and I don't even want to pretend like I have answers to any of it, but personally, I kind of, over the last couple of years, I've been thinking more and more of, it costs so much to train nurses, and there has to be, and utilizing someone's resources, knowledge resources, that have been honed over a 10-year period in an urgent care. It's almost like an underutilization of healthcare systems resources.
Yeah.
Because I do think, people are a resource that need to be valued, that knowledge is a huge resource. and I, I don't really know. It's like, are we really saving money?
Yeah.
Or are we just we really focused on the short game of, what our staffing numbers look like?
Yeah, I think
that week.
Yeah, I think I think part of it's a short game for sure, but I mean, I think that not always do organizations, and I'm not speaking of any particular organization, but not always do organizations look at the long game of, hey, what's this going to be if we lose this, 10-year nurse? What kind of organizational knowledge is walking out the door?
Yeah, and I don't know. I certainly don't feel like anyone's saying that.
Yeah, organizational knowledge and experience that's just walking out the door, and you're like, how do we let this happen?
Yeah, and for me, I mean, personally, I was just in a position that I knew I needed some sort of break, and I just kept having, and again, this is completely just my viewpoint. It was right for me, not right for anyone else, but it was right for me that, like, I couldn't keep listening to this is just how it is, or these are just the challenges we have to deal with, and it's like, started kind of feeling like, well, because we all just keep saying that's what well, this is how it is, and I personally I found like that the complacency, just my personal complacency of it, just becoming more of a load or weight on my morals and my beliefs about this job. And another thing we say, as you probably know, Kim Wagley, who I just love, her and I used to joke about all this, how oftentimes, like, to get the attention of the people that can change things, like, sometimes you can't just be the squeaky wheel. Like, we used to say, like, sometimes you have to be the absolute lunatic to get people to pay attention to you.
Yeah.
And, I guess that's kind of the point I found myself in, where it's like, I don't feel like I'm being heard. I don't feel like any of us are really being heard, or our concerns are being taken seriously, and been in this game long enough. I think I have pretty decent coping mechanisms, but it's just I'm working less, and it's taking me days to recover, and all the just increased alarm fatigue. Just coming home and it's like not wanting to hear anything, not wanting to be around kids. I mean, it's PTSD developing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if some of the newer nurses like really realize like. That's serious stuff that if you're not careful will catch up with you later in life, you need to respect it.
Yeah, I think that, it's one of those things that you don't realize how much it wears on you until it does. I mean, I remember going home from shifts and still hearing the cell phone ringing in my pocket.
Totally.
And going, oh my gosh, I'm still hearing the cell phone. I'm still hearing alarm. I'm still hearing, monitor alarms, and you're like, holy smokes, what?
I remember I had something similar like that happen. I was in the grocery store. I was at UNM, it had been probably close to a year that I left flight, and when I was flying, we had this just old flip phone that was, I don't know, early 2000s. It was just something that you haven't seen in forever.
Yeah.
So, and then the phone ring was very distinct. And someone happened to have that phone and so it rang with that same old ringtone. And I could not believe, like, how, I was like, that is crazy. Here I am grocery shopping with my kids, and I just happened to hear that ringtone, and my, the sympathetic dump I had.
You're like, okay, we gotta go. Go.
Right?
Oh,
wow,
that's funny.
That just sticks with you, huh? Because it was a while after I'd left as well.
Yeah, no, that sticks with you. It like becomes visceral. You're like, you just react.
Mm-hmm. Where's the helmet? Put your boots on. Like,
gotta go. Time to fly.
Like the super cereal aisle is very strange.
That's a bad sign, Jess. That's a bad sign.
But I don't know. It's part of what makes us good at this job, I think.
Yeah, it's true.
That ability, I don't know, to react and just kind of, I love that, how it just makes you be in the moment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I've seen written, and I've seen, alluded to many times is the fact that many of the ED problems are not ED problems necessarily. They're hospital problems that just manifest and show up in the ED, because the ED is the bastion of last hope, right? So, a full house, oftentimes, in the place where I work now, a full house oftentimes means that the ED is going to be holding patients, and we don't hold them to the degree that you guys did, but certainly, holding patients is holding patients, and I think every ED in the country is holding patients. Very few aren't.
Yeah, definitely. Like, all of us kind of have to learn how to be decent med-surg SAC nurses.
Yeah.
Along the way,
Absolutely. And for those who haven't had that experience, that's tough. I mean, that was one of the things I kind of struggle with, because I never did med-surg or SAC.
Didn't either.
And I found in taking care of hold patients that I'm not a great inpatient nurse. I mean, give me a code, give me a trauma, and I got you. But I'm not necessarily a great inpatient nurse. When someone's like, "Hey, did you look at the MAR and give the 9 o'clock meds?" And I'm like, "Oh, we do that here?" And yeah, we do that there, because we've been sitting on patients for 24 hours.
I don't know where the other ones are, but they're not in the Pyxis. But yeah, I gave the ones we have.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think I hope that maybe, I mean, one of the kind of solutions or steps in the right direction, I think, is to maybe not think of the ER so isolated as this island, because, I know the staffing model that, I have kind of strong feelings about the place of private consulting firms and in community hospitals, but I think the reality is the staffing model that I feel like was just running me so ragged. It was supposedly, designed just to be used when we are at our lowest acuity.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, that model's there, and when the staff, when there's not staff to support a higher staffed model, then that's the model that gets used, and then it becomes kind of like, well, like, why is the individual nurse, the person, like, why is that, all of that responsibility kind of put on them? Why is it just easy to kind of look away and say, oh yeah, the ER is functioning on a staffing model that's really only designed for low acuity, and most certainly we have not been at a low acuity for months and months. Maybe that's something that the hospital needs to step in and look at. Like, do we send some inpatient nurses in? Do we offer, some sort of critical incentive bonus for people to pick up more shifts? Just something, so you just don't feel like you're the one that just keeps showing up and getting the beat down,
Yeah. Now, in your experience, has it been mostly a staffing issue or mostly a physical capacity issue?
Both.
It's been both?
Yeah, both. I think, so I think physical capacity has always been, in the 3 years I've been there. I've definitely seen it ramp up, but we were much busier, and people were sicker than when I first started. But
I think that's been the case. I mean, it seems like the patients are just sicker and sicker, and it's
and
insanity.
Also matched with I know that it's the positions are open, but we just aren't. People aren't applying, and the leadership does an amazing job, but you can only fill so many holes, and we have decent travelers come in, but there's just always that negative. So I think the combination of those two things just take a really, really high toll. And the fact that it does matter, when you have such a high acuity and you feel like you're taking care of that with inappropriate resources, like, it does matter. And it's hard to leave feeling like I did not do a great job today, or I feel like I didn't provide. I felt like I was just putting out fires and not able to, direct care, more appropriately manage care, like anticipate. It was just putting out fires, and I don't know, that's just not sustainable.
Yeah. There's a woman who runs research over at the ENA named Lisa Wolf, and she often talks about burnout, and she's like, it's not burnout. It's not burnout that's the problem. It's not burnout that's killing the nurses. It's just, morally they know they're not taking the care of patients that they want to. And it's moral. It's moral, what's the word she uses?
They call it moral injury, which I think is
moral injury. That she said it's
not burnout, but moral injury.
Yeah, I mean that she's like, you got these great nurses that want to take good care of people, and they can't take the care for people the way they want to, and under the conditions in which they work. So you end up having moral injury.
I don't know what changes. I don't know if it's with the experience, because I've also had nurses that will say, well, you did the best you could. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I get that. And that works for some things. But there's also a point where it's like, I can't stand by that. It's not good enough,
Yeah.
And I don't know. Again, I know we're all strapped and facing just challenges as an institution across the board, and it's also not something that I think, well, you just throw more bodies at it. That's not going to necessarily fix a problem, but
no.
I don't know. It's just concerning, because I think that where the focus is in a large amount of healthcare is these kind of like tangible data points and variables that they can measure, and I just think inherently like we are providing a humanistic care, and I just think you can't dumb it down that much. You can't quantify it like that. And
it's hard to put numbers on that. It's hard to put numbers. It's hard to put productivity numbers on how long I need to hold your hand after you've lost your loved one.
Right. Yeah.
It's hard to put a productivity tag on that. You're like, this family just lost a child. I know we need to turn the room over, but come on.
We're trying to kick them out of recess because we have, another 3 ambulances coming in, lights and sirens. So.
Yeah. And been there, done that. I mean, you certainly have had those, we're trying to, get this moving along, but some things just take a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's tough. That makes it tough. I wish I knew the answers. I wish anyone knew the answers.
I know. I mean, I think it's a good start. I think, I've gone through a lot of different emotions this last week, and part of me, I was like, oh, it was great, and then people identified with it, and then I pissed some people off, and that never feels good. And then, I'm thinking, maybe, are you just stirring the pot, Jessica? And I'm like, nope, I think this is an important first step. I think, our voices have power. We all know that the nurses are the ones that kind of hold any hospital together.
Yeah.
And we are so good at advocating for our patients, and I think we need to be better at advocating for ourselves and what we need. And it's not like, oh, I'm just not cut out for this. I'm not a real ER nurse. I just can't hang. But no, I'm a very good ER nurse. This is in my blood. I love this. But this is what I need to do this job, because it's not an easy job. And not everyone can do it. We're a rare breed. So I think just kind of advocating and realizing that was the kind of amazing thing. I was like, God, if we're all feeling like this, I don't know what the next step is, but
yeah. Now you mentioned that you pissed some people off. Did you get negative feedback about your article? Just kind of from the grapevine. I tried. I think any time that I don't know. I think that it just came across as personal to a couple people in leadership, which is unfortunate, because I really didn't mean it to be personal, and I tried to make it very clear how much respect I have. Because everyone is just, I mean, you know that, Kevin. It's one of the finest groups of people I've ever worked with.
I think the director is the best ER director I've ever worked for. And the charge nurses are amazing, but all of us, each and every one of us, can only do so much. And just because someone can't fix a problem doesn't mean they're not doing their job well.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, I agree. I think that the facility has incredible leadership. I mean, truly, like, all the way through. And I know there's been a lot of leadership changes since I've been there, but there are incredible leaders throughout that organization.
And to the very top. And I think everyone has really, like, honest, best intentions. And I think my hope was just kind of be like, hey, guys, like, look over here. I know you don't see us all the time, and we seem to just always have our stuff together, but we're suffering, you know?
Yeah.
So, but for the most part, I mean, all for that, it's overwhelming positive response that I've gotten.
So how many hits so far? How many reads so far?
This morning, one of my nurses that I used to work with, she texted me last night a screenshot of that Savage Paramedics had reposted. So that bumped it. Yeah, that bumped up quite a few views. I'm at 31,000, I think, this morning was what
Holy
I checked.
cow.
Crazy.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. I don't really know what to do with it from here. I mean, I feel like there's some momentum. But I don't know. Maybe I love writing. You know, I found that kind of has always been a coping mechanism, or way I've kind of processed a lot of the stuff I've seen, and and it feels good to have that medium kind of so well received.
Yeah, no, it certainly seems to. You know, it's a couple folks have sent me emails, said, "Hey, have you seen this? Hey, have you seen this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I seen it when it first came out."
Yeah, I know Jess.
I was like, yeah, we go way back.
So I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm like kind of leaving some space for the next thing to come along, and I don't quite know though, Kevin. If anyone has any great ideas or wanting to work together to advocate for the ER nurses, let me know.
Yeah, well, I think that, you know, certainly I think some leaders in emergency nursing have seen this. I know that for a fact. You know, certainly leaders in emergency nursing have seen this and are probably processing and thinking themselves, you know, what next and then what? Because that's always the question. I mean, you know, like we get all these things that say, hey, you know, every year we get told we're the most trustworthy profession in the country, but yet it doesn't seem to keep people from taking seriously legislation that's going to protect us.
Right.
So, you know, and it's one of those where you're like, okay, then, well, help a brother out here. Help a brother out here. Come on.
Yeah, well, I've never had any interest in politics, but this last week I'm like, oh, I could get into this.
Yeah.
It's when you have such a group that you have such respect for, you know, that you're all kind of going through the same thing, I guess it's not okay, and I think that's the first step is just us speaking up and saying, hey, like this is not okay, and it's not because I can't hack it.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I don't know how many times I heard people say, well, they couldn't hack it in the ER. And it's like, no, I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it. It's
sometimes I think, like, I mean, my decision to leave, I was kind of like, I didn't have any, you know, final moment that just pushed me over the edge. I was like, I have to leave. I can't, you know, but it was, I could see it on the horizon, you know, and I think if you're proactive enough about just taking care of yourself, I was like, God, you know, this is wearing me down, and, you know, we have a couple bad MCIs, like, I just don't know, like, this is going to really, I don't really know how I'm going to process this. It's going to be really hard for me to work through. And also I think the newer nurses need to know that, that they oftentimes don't really know what they don't know, and until it becomes too much to deal with and completely overwhelming. And unfortunately, I mean, we see it. We hear about it in the news. There's an increased risk for suicide in this profession. I mean, it happens.
That's a scary thought.
With horrible frequency,
Yep.
In EMS and nurses, even in physicians, and it's like, this has to do with that. This plays into those statistics.
Absolutely. It all comes down to the wear and tear, the mileage on our mental health. I mean, I think even when I was in my my mid 20s, 30s, I had seen so much stuff that like the people just aren't meant to see. Mm-hmm. And you end up it changes you. It just changes you. And there's no way it can't. There's no way it can't change you, in that you're just not normal.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably one reason we all kind of stick together.
Yeah. I mean, you just see things and you do things and you're part of things that you're like, this isn't how life's supposed to go. This isn't what you think.
I had something like that happen with just recently. I've been trying to write more as kind of a way to just process things, and it was a shift that I had, at the U and in trauma, and my mom just retired and she moved down here. So she is non-medical. She worked in real estate, and I had her read this like just kind of quick creative writing piece that I wrote about 2 patients that we took care of in Trauma 1 that day.
And she just wanted to give you a hug and be like, oh my God, are you okay?
Oh my gosh, right? Like, so yeah, and then in the piece it kind of like the connection came from, the first patient of the day was this traumatic amputation of a leg that I was handed. And then how like that related to the last patient of the day, which was like a field delivery, precipitous delivery.
Yeah.
And how I'd made that connection. I was like, oh, it's kind of the same size. Weight feels about the same in the arm. Like, wow, Jess.
Okay,
wow.
So yeah, you're like, wow. Yeah, she's like, you are a little bit messed up, my friend.
Right. She's like, I never thought what it'd feel like to hold a leg, but now I know because I've held plenty of babies. So.
That's just things that people shouldn't know, but we do, because that's what we do. And
yeah, and I guess that's kind of like, I mean, I guess that's one reason we got to take care of ourselves, each other, is because I really don't think everyone has that capability to see that and process that, and like,
you're right.
Can go on, and then I come home and I'm a mom and take care of my kiddos, and we have our little farm, and do everything that's just not related to that. And I really am able to kind of put that somewhere, or deal with that in a way, with writing, or somewhere that it doesn't, take over the rest of my life. And
yeah,
I think that's pretty impressive skill that a lot of us have, and something that we shouldn't take for granted.
It really is. And it's, I don't know how many times I may have said this on the podcast. I don't remember, but I remember not too long ago talking to a family whose father and husband just passed, and talking to the family and getting the process started. We were actively resuscitating him, but it wasn't going well. And you're kind of preparing them. You're preparing them for, in my current role as a house supervisor. I'm sitting there talking to the family and saying, okay, I'm gonna go get the doctor, but things aren't going well. And you need to know that here's what's happening. Here's what I see. I see that we're breathing for him, and I see that we're circulating his blood for him, which means his heart and lungs aren't working, and that's a bad sign. And trying to make it you're trying to find that place between hopeful but realistic, and
right, but still reality.
The he's not dead yet, but it's coming. and then said, okay, well, I'm going to go get the doctor so the doctor can tell you more. And knowing full well that by the time you go back there, the doctor is going to be ready to call it. And, to go into having that conversation, to walk out in this particular case, I walked out and there was a older woman and a younger girl coming out, and they were complaining about the wait time, and they were like, oh my God, it's such a crazy wait. I can't believe this place, and this is just crap. And I'm like, well, I start talking to them. And I'm like, well, what were you here for? And she's like, well, she's got this cut on her finger, and she has this most non-impressive cut I've ever seen in my life. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, and you got to be equally nice. You got to be equally nice and equally, understand. We got a lot going on, so that's why things take a while. And you're trying to be nice, but when in reality, what you want to say is, why don't you just step into that door right there where I just got done telling this family member that this family member is going to die. And you're like,
be thankful for your cut.
Be thankful for your cut. Go home and go see your primary tomorrow, for God's sakes. But of course, you can't say that, and you're just like, oh well, I'm sorry, it was such a wait, and we did the best we can, blah blah blah. And then you're just like going, and to have that, like the dichotomy of going from one extreme to the next, you're just like, this is mentally exhausting.
It is. Yeah, it really can be. In some ways, almost, yes, day to day, that is so frustrating. It's like, oh my gosh, like, really, like, you're complaining about this. Like, you have no idea. And also, in some ways, I know that, when my family members have asked me, or friends that are not in this field, like, how the heck do you do this? Why do you do this? And in some ways, I almost feel like it's a gift, like, all of us only live one life. And
you're right.
It takes a long time to kind of come to these, like, just life truths. I mean, I'm not quite 40, but, like, dang, it's been a rough road to kind of come to a place where I just have these things where I know and accept and just I can help me live my life better. And it's something that I feel like we're privy to, like almost the patients, because it's so stripped down, it's so distilled in the emergency department. I know that I have taken strength from someone else's situation that I had nothing to do with their life. I just happened to be there when it was challenged or ended. And actually that was the gift they gave me, like this huge kind of knowledge or understanding that was something I didn't necessarily have to work through or work for, you know?
Yeah, you're right.
But I've used that knowledge in another, I'll use that strength or knowledge in another part of my personal life, and it's definitely helped and been for the better. Man, that's the most sense I can make of it. I think.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, for the most part, ER nurses are some of the strongest people I've ever met in my life. I mean, some of the strongest, kindest, loving, hard-loving people I've ever met in my life have been emergency nurses, and they're incredible. And it's part of it, I think, is just in what we do and the appreciation we have. And the lessons learned that we got the lesson, but didn't have to take the consequences. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We got to witness it, but we didn't really have to work for it, or work for it in a personal way.
Yeah.
It's different. You're almost like you're a spectator.
Yeah.
Kind of
yeah, you're right.
You can learn a lot. I mean, it sounds a little hooey. Sometimes I'll tell this to a newer nurse of the department. They look at me like, "Okay, Jessica."
They're like, "Okay." Yeah. Are we gonna hug a tree next? Come on.
Right. Like.
But it's true. But it's true. And they'll know that at some point. They'll know that in their time.
Yeah. I think when I first came to emergency nurses, because I went right into the ER after graduation, and it worked. It worked for me. It was a really steep learning curve, but I didn't have kids at the time. In my mid-20s, I had time and energy to just immerse myself in that and just learn it and soak it all up. And but one thing I loved so much about it from the very beginning is because just by nature, I tend to be I can be kind of a heady person. Like, I can just be in my thoughts too much. And, I was thinking, like, the art of emergency nursing, like, I could make a podcast on the art of procrastination, Kevin. like, just by nature, I'm, like, just so, like, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. Or, like, do I really feel like doing that right now?
Oh, you have no idea. You've got nothing on me, pal.
No. I mean, maybe we could do a, like, segment, the art of procrastination,
That's right. That's right. The art of nursing is my podcast. The art of procrastination is my life.
It's my life. Totally. I feel you, man. And I love that just I knew I could go to work and just it forces you to be so in the moment. You do what you need to do. There's not putting something off for tomorrow or even 10 minutes from now, in some cases you're just in the moment. And I think for me personally, that's been so healthy and something that you just don't get in a lot of fields and careers.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
Like
it's
some weird twisted meditation, like a Zen-like experience. But
right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's crazy. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's a crazy life we live, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So
it is, but it's some of the best people I've ever met.
Agreed for sure. So, present company included. So, it's been a hell of a ride. And
yeah.
I hope it has been for you too. I mean, I know that, every facility has its challenges, but boy, you leave there having grown significantly. So, at least every position I've ever been in, I have left saying, okay, I learned a lot from that.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Good, bad, otherwise.
Right.
It's
yeah,
been.
There's always something new. You don't ever know it, And even though I think, even in this experience for me, I know it's been kind of painful and not the most comfortable, but, this is, I know that this is going to be just like that. Yeah, it's going to help me, find the next, what's the next thing? Where am I best? Where do I need to be?
Yeah.
In life, and yeah, thankful for all those years. Help me kind of just like trust that will happen. And
yeah. No.
It'll work out.
It will. It'll always work out. People always laugh at me, but I always say there's been very few changes in my life, whether they were my choice or not. There are very few changes in my life that didn't turn out to be a blessing and turn out to be exactly what I needed, the right time. And maybe that's just my optimistic nature, making the best of whatever happens. But, I've been blessed that every time I've made a change in my life, I've been like, hey, that worked out pretty good. Mm-hmm. And it, it may not have always been good, right, in the, immediate, but it turns out to be like so much better than I could have hoped for.
Right. Yeah. Like overall, I feel the same way. It's like kind of, I've had times when I've like fought a little too hard to do something, and it actually, it didn't work out well at all. And then I've had times where I've just given up. I have no control here.
Yeah.
I don't know like how we're going to get to tomorrow, but I'm just going to trust that we are. And that's brought me some of the most rewarding things that I have to this day.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure.
So much better for that. So.
Yep.
Trying to trust that will be the case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it will for sure. I hope you've enjoyed listening in on this conversation with me and Jessica. Jessica's going to be back next week on the podcast, where I'm going to run her through the Art of Emergency Nursing questions and get a little bit more of her insight of her vast experience. I'd like to get your feedback both on the letter and this episode. Let me know how things are going in your ED. Do you have an overcrowding problem? Are you guys sitting on a lot of holds? give me some feedback either in Facebook on the Art of Emergency Nursing page, or you can go to our new website at artofemergencynursing.com. Leave a comment either for this episode or in Facebook, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Facebook.